I wasn't supposed to be home. I wasn't supposed to see it. And I definitely wasn't supposed to read the words that would make me walk away from everything I'd spent 2 years building. My name is Mark Stevens, and this is the story of how a random Tuesday in November became the day I discovered that the woman I was supposed to marry in 6 weeks had been living a completely different life than the one I thought we shared. Hit subscribe for motivation, and if trust ever cost you everything, and drop your city in the comments. The rain was coming down in sheets that afternoon, the kind of November storm that turns city streets into rivers and makes you question every life choice that brought you outside. I'd left the construction site early because lightning was striking too close to the steel framework we'd been installing on the new downtown office complex. My crew chief had sent everyone home around 2 in the afternoon, which meant I had 4 unexpected hours before I was supposed to meet Rebecca for our wedding. Venue final walkthrough at 6. 4 hours that changed absolutely everything. Our apartment was on the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse in the Arts District, one of those trendy spaces with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows that Rebecca had fallen in love with the moment we'd walked through the door 2 years ago. We'd moved in together after dating for 8 months, which everyone said was too fast. But when you know, you know, or at least that's what I'd thought. That's what I'd believed right up until the moment I walked into our bedroom to change out of my wet work clothes and saw that journal sitting there, open and waiting like a loaded gun. Rebecca was a writer. She kept journals constantly, filling page after page with thoughts and observations and story ideas. I'd always respected her privacy, never once asking to read what she wrote. She told me once that her journals were her sacred space, the place where she processed her feelings without judgment or consequence. I'd understood that. I'd supported that. I'd never once violated that trust, but the journal was open. Face up on our bed, on my side of the bed actually, like it had been placed there deliberately, and the page that was showing had my name on it, written in Rebecca's distinctive handwriting right there, at the top of the entry. Stood in the doorway for a long moment, water still dripping from my jacket onto the hardwood floor, staring at that open journal. Every instinct told me to walk away, to close it without reading, to respect her privacy the way I always had. But my name was right there, and something about the way the journal was positioned, open and centered on my pillow, felt wrong, felt intentional. I walked over and picked it up. The entry was dated 3 days ago, the previous Saturday, when Rebecca had told me she was going to her sister's house in Portland for the weekend to help with wedding planning stuff. I'd stayed home to work overtime on the construction project, trying to build up our savings account before the wedding expenses hit. Mark asked me again today about moving the wedding date up, the entry began. He's so eager, so earnest, so completely convinced that we're building this perfect life together. It's almost sad how much he believes in us, how much he believes in me. If he knew the truth, if he had any idea what I've actually been doing every weekend for the past 9 months, it would destroy him completely. And honestly, that almost makes it more exciting. My hands started shaking. The journal felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, Adrian. And I spent the entire weekend at his cabin in the mountains. No phones, no interruptions. Just 2 days of being completely ourselves without any pretense or lies. He asked me again when I'm going to leave Mark. I gave him the same answer. I always give soon after the wedding, once I have access to Mark's trust fund money. Adrian laughed and called me mercenary, but he loves it. He loves that I'm willing to play the long game for what I want. I sat down, hard on the edge of the bed, my wet work clothes forgotten, my entire world tilting sideways as I kept reading. The truth is, I never loved Mark, not really. He was a means to an end from the very beginning. I met him at that charity construction event that my magazine was covering, and I saw exactly what he was. A good-hearted, hard-working guy from a wealthy family who was desperate to prove he wasn't just some trust fund baby. He wanted to be seen as a real man, a working man, someone who earned his way. It made him so easy to manipulate. The words kept coming, page after page of calculated deception. Rebecca described in detail how she'd researched my family before we even met, how she'd engineered our first conversation, how she'd carefully constructed a persona of the quirky artist girlfriend who loved me for who I was, not for my family's money. Mark's trust fund vests fully when he turns 30 or when he gets married, whichever comes first. He turns 30 in 3 years, but he gets married in 6 weeks. Once we're married, he'll have access to the full 12 million. And once he has access, I'll have access. Give it 6 months, maybe a year of playing the devoted wife. Then I'll file for divorce and walk away with half of everything. Adrian and I will finally be able to start our real life together. I flipped back through earlier entries, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The journal went back 18 months, and as I read, I watched Rebecca document her entire relationship with Adrian fucking Pierce, her editor at the magazine where she worked. Their affair had started 2 months after Rebecca and I moved in together. 2 months after she'd told me she loved me for the first time. Every weekend trip to help her sister in Portland had been a lie. Her sister Jessica lived in Seattle, not Portland, and according to several journal entries, Jessica had no idea Rebecca was using her as a cover story. Every girls' night out that ran late had actually been nights at Adrian's apartment downtown. Every writing retreat had been a romantic getaway with the man she actually wanted to be. With the most recent entries were the worst. They detailed her wedding dress shopping, which she described as hilarious performance art. They talked about the venue walkthrough we were supposed to do tonight, which she called another tedious step in the world's longest con. They discussed her actual wedding fantasy with Adrian, the real ceremony she wanted to have once she'd secured my money and divorced. Me, Mark, is so trusting, so naive, so completely convinced that people are fundamentally good. It's his biggest weakness. He takes everything at face value. He believes every word I say. When I tell him I love him, he lights up like a kid on Christmas morning. It would be sweet if it wasn't so pathetic. Sometimes I almost feel guilty for what I'm doing to him. Then I remember the $12 million and the guilt evaporates. I closed the journal carefully, setting it back exactly where I'd found it on the bed. Then I stood up, walked to the bathroom, and threw up. When I was done, I washed my face, changed into dry clothes, and sat down at the kitchen table with my phone. The apartment was completely silent except for the rain hammering against the windows. Somewhere in this building that we'd picked out together, in this life that we'd supposedly built together, Rebecca was probably working at the magazine office, completely unaware that I'd come home early, completely unaware that her carefully constructed con had just collapsed. I didn't call her. I didn't call anyone. Instead, I sat there and made a list of everything I needed to do, everyone I needed to contact, every single step I needed to take to protect myself from the person I'd been planning to marry. First call was to my older brother, James. He was a corporate attorney who specialized in asset protection, and he'd been skeptical of Rebecca from the beginning, though he'd never said why. Now I understood. He'd seen something I'd been too blinded by love to notice. Mark, what's wrong? James answered immediately, probably hearing something in my voice. You sound terrible. Rebecca's been running a con on me, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, for our entire relationship. I found her journal. She's only marrying me to get access to my trust fund, and she's been having an affair with her editor for over a year and a half. The silence, on the other end of the line, stretched for 5 seconds. Then, where are you right now? At the apartment. Pack a bag and get out of there immediately. Come to my office. Don't talk to Rebecca. Don't confront her. Don't give her any warning that you know. Can you do that? Yeah, I said. I can do that. Good man. I'll make some calls. We're going to handle this, Mark. I promise you. We're going to handle this. I packed quickly and efficiently, taking only what I absolutely needed: clothes, laptop, important documents, family photos that predated Rebecca. I left my keys on the kitchen counter, left the engagement ring I'd been wearing on my right hand sitting next to them, left the life I'd thought I was, building scattered in pieces across that apartment. By the time I walked out the door, I wasn't shaking anymore. The initial shock had crystallized into something cold and focused. Rebecca had played a long game with me, carefully constructing her trap over 2 years of lies. Now it was my turn to play. James's office was in a high-rise downtown, all glass and steel and power. He was waiting for me when I arrived, along with 2 other people. A woman in her 50s named Margaret Chen, who James introduced as a forensic accountant, and a younger guy named Tyler Ross, who apparently specialized in private investigation. Tell us everything, James said, gesturing me to a chair in his conference room. Start from the beginning. I handed him the photos I'd taken of every relevant page in Rebecca's journal. While he read, I explained how I'd found it, what it contained, what Rebecca had been planning. Margaret was making notes on her laptop, her expression neutral but focused. Tyler was already on his phone, presumably starting whatever investigation process he used. "This is actually good," James said finally, looking up from the photos. "I know it doesn't feel good, but legally this is very good. She's documented her entire fraud in her own handwriting. The intent to deceive is crystal clear. Her affair is thoroughly documented. And you discovered this before you got married, which means your trust fund is completely protected. What about the wedding?" I asked. "We've got deposits on everything. Venue, caterer, photographer, the whole thing." "How much total?" "About $45,000. James waved a hand dismissively. "Consider it the cheapest $12 million lesson you'll ever learn. We'll cancel everything, eat the deposits, and count ourselves lucky." "I want more than that," I said quietly. "She spent 2 years of my life running this con. She made me believe we were building something real. She was going to marry me, wait long enough to maximize the divorce settlement, then destroy me and walk away with half of everything. I want her to pay for that." James smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "Now you're thinking like a Stevens. What did you have in mind?" Over the next 3 hours, we built a strategy. Not illegal, not even particularly unethical, but absolutely devastating to Rebecca's carefully laid plans. Step 1, document everything. Tyler would conduct a full investigation into Rebecca and Adrian's relationship, gathering photographic evidence, electronic communications, financial records showing their weekend getaways together. Everything that would prove the affair beyond any doubt. Step 2, financial protection. Margaret would work with James to ensure my trust fund was completely locked down, with additional legal protections. That would make it impossible for Rebecca to claim any portion of it even if we'd gotten married. Step 3, social consequence. This was the part I felt almost guilty about, but James convinced me it was necessary. We would ensure that everyone in Rebecca's professional and social circle knew exactly what she'd done, not through gossip or rumor, but through carefully documented fact. "She's a writer at a literary magazine," James noted. "Her reputation is everything in that world. If it becomes known that she's a documented liar and fraud, that she ran a 2-year con on her fiancé, her career in journalism is effectively over. No publication will want to be associated with that kind of ethical violation." Step 4, Adrian Pierce. Tyler had already started researching him, and what he'd found was interesting. Adrian was married, had been for 12 years, with 3 kids in private school. His wife, Caroline, was a cardiologist at the university hospital. She made significantly more money than Adrian did. "If we inform Caroline about the affair," Tyler said, "complete with documentation, Adrian's marriage is done. And if his marriage is done, his lifestyle takes a major hit. From what I can see, they're living well above his salary level. That's coming from her income." "Do it," I said. "Make sure Caroline knows everything." Step 5 was my personal favorite. We would wait until the day before the wedding to execute everything. Let Rebecca think she'd succeeded. Let her believe the con had worked perfectly. Then pull the rug out from under her at the last possible moment. "It's risky," James warned. "She'll expect to hear from you when you don't show up for the venue. Walk through tonight. You'll have to maintain the facade for 6 more weeks." "I can do it," I said. "If she can lie to my face for 2 years, I can lie to hers for 6 weeks." That night, I texted Rebecca from a hotel room across town. "Got called back to the site for an emergency repair. Won't make the venue walkthrough, so sorry. Love you," she responded immediately. "No worries, babe. I'll handle it. We can talk about it tonight. Love you more." The ease with which she lied, even in text messages, even about something as small as a missed appointment, was stunning. But I matched her, text for text, lie for lie, for the next 6 weeks. I played the role of the eager fiancé perfectly. I moved back into the apartment the next day, claiming I'd stayed at James's place after the emergency site work ran late. Rebecca believed it without question, just like she believed every other lie I told her. Went to cake tastings and smiled at samples. Attended the final tuxedo fitting and joked with the tailor. Showed up to the rehearsal dinner planning meeting and helped finalize the menu. Every moment, I watched Rebecca perform her own role, and I marveled at how good she was, how naturally the lies came to her, how completely she'd fooled me for 2 years. Tyler's investigation turned up even more than we'd expected. Rebecca and Adrian had been sloppy, leaving electronic trails everywhere. Hotel bookings made on credit cards, emails discussing their future together, text messages that were explicitly romantic and often sexual. Tyler compiled it all into a file, folder 3 inches thick. The investigation into Rebecca's background revealed something else interesting. This wasn't her first con. She'd dated a wealthy older man 4 years ago in Chicago, gotten engaged, then suddenly broken it off after he'd put her name on several of his bank accounts. He'd suspected fraud but never had proof. She'd walked away with about $200,000 that he couldn't prove she'd stolen. She's a professional, Tyler said, showing me the timeline. This is what she does. She finds wealthy, trusting men. She runs the relationship long enough to gain access to their money. Then she disappears with what she can get. Why marry me then? I asked. Why not just get added to my accounts like the last guy? Because you were smarter than that, James said. You kept your finances separate. She couldn't access your money without marriage. So she had to play a longer game. Margaret discovered that Rebecca had been preparing for the divorce before the wedding even happened. She'd been secretly photographing financial documents, collecting information about my assets, building her case for a massive settlement. If the marriage had gone through, she'd have filed for divorce within a year, with a claim for millions. She was thorough, Margaret said with something like professional admiration. If you hadn't found that journal, she probably would have succeeded. The week before the wedding, everything was ready. Tyler had delivered his complete investigation to both me and to Adrian's wife, Caroline. James had every legal document prepared. Margaret had my financial protections locked down so tight that a nuclear bomb couldn't penetrate them. I'd even arranged for Rebecca's sister, Jessica, to fly in early, ostensibly to help with last-minute wedding preparations. But really, I wanted her there for what was about to happen. Jessica deserved to know how her sister had been using her as an alibi. Caroline Pierce contacted me 3 days before the wedding. We met at a coffee shop downtown, 2 people whose partners had betrayed them in identical ways. Thank you for the information, Caroline said, her voice controlled but her eyes showing the pain underneath. I've suspected for years, but I could never prove anything. The documentation your investigator provided was very thorough. What are you going to do? I asked. I've already filed for divorce. I've also reported Adrian to the magazine's HR department with copies of everything. He's been fired as of this morning. The ethics violation of conducting an affair with a subordinate employee was enough. But the documentation of his use of company resources for personal romantic getaway sealed it. Rebecca doesn't know yet. Caroline smiled, and it was sharp enough to cut. Not yet. Adrian has been trying to reach her all day, but I have his phone. I wanted her to find out the fun way. The day before the wedding, everything came together perfectly. Jessica arrived at the apartment at noon, surprised to find me home from the construction site. Rebecca was at work, finishing up her final day before taking wedding leave. Mark, is everything okay? Jessica asked, noticing something in my expression. Handed her copies of the relevant journal entries, the ones mentioning how Rebecca had been using her as an alibi. Jessica's face went white as she read. Oh my God. Mark, I had no idea. I haven't seen Rebecca in months. She told you she was visiting me? Every weekend for the past 9 months, I said. She was actually at a cabin in the mountains with her editor, Adrian Pierce. Her married editor? Very married. 3 kids. Though his wife filed for divorce yesterday, so I guess not married for much longer. Jessica looked like she might be sick. What are you going to do? I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who Rebecca really is. Starting tomorrow at the venue, in front of every single person we invited to witness our wedding. That evening, Rebecca came home excited and happy, chattering about her last day at work and how sweet everyone had been, bringing her flowers and well wishes for the wedding. She had no idea that Adrian had been fired. He'd apparently been trying to reach her all day. But Caroline still had his phone. Can you believe it's really happening tomorrow? Rebecca said, kissing me on the cheek. This time tomorrow we'll be married. I can't believe it, I said honestly. It really does feel surreal. We went to bed early, Rebecca claiming she wanted to be well rested for the big day. I lay awake next to her, this woman I'd planned to spend my life with, and felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no hurt, just a cold certainty that tomorrow she would finally pay for every lie she'd ever told me. The venue was a restored mansion on the lake, the kind of place that looked like it belonged in a movie about old money and elegant parties. We'd chosen it together 10 months ago, and Rebecca had cried happy tears when I'd put down the deposit. I'd thought they were real tears at the time. Guests started arriving at 2 in the afternoon for a 3 o'clock ceremony. The weather was perfect, clear and crisp, the autumn leaves creating a picture-perfect backdrop. Rebecca was in the bridal suite getting ready with her bridesmaids. I was in the groom's room with my groomsmen, including James and Tyler. "You're sure you want to do this?" James asked one final time. "We can call it off now, send everyone home. Let her figure out what happened later." "I'm sure," I said, adjusting my tie in the mirror. She wanted a performance. "She's going to get one. At 2:45, the wedding coordinator came to tell me everyone was seated and ready. 180 guests, split evenly between my family and friends and Rebecca's. Her parents were in the front row, glowing with pride. My parents were seated across the aisle, my mother already dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. I walked out to the altar and took my position. The string quartet started playing. The bridesmaids came down the aisle one by one. Then the music changed to the bridal chorus. Rebecca appeared at the back of the hall, radiant in her white dress, her father holding her arm. She saw me waiting at the altar and smiled. That beautiful smile that had first made me fall in love with her 2 years ago. The smile I now knew was completely fake. She walked down the aisle slowly, gracefully, every eye in the room on her. Her father kissed her cheek and handed her to me at the altar. She took my hands, her eyes shining with what looked like genuine happiness. The officiant began his prepared remarks about love and commitment and the journey we were about to begin together. He talked about trust and honesty and the sacred bond of marriage. Then he got to the part where he asked if anyone had any objection to the union. "Actually," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I do." The room went completely silent. Rebecca's smile faltered. "Mark, what?" "I object to marrying someone who's been running a con on me for 2 years. I said, my voice steady. "Someone who's been having an affair with her editor. Someone who was only marrying me to get access to my trust fund, then planning to divorce me and take half." Rebecca's face went pure white. "That's insane." "Mark, you're having cold feet, but I found your journal, Rebecca, the one where you documented everything. Your relationship with Adrian Pierce, your real reason for dating me, your plan to wait 6 months after the wedding, then file for divorce." I pulled printed copies of the journal, pages from my jacket pocket, and handed them to the officiant. These are just a few excerpts. Dated entries in her handwriting detailing the entire fraud. The officiant started reading, his expression shifting from confusion to shock. Rebecca tried to grab the papers from him, but James stepped forward from the groomsman's position, physically blocking her. "Those are fake," Rebecca said, her voice rising. "Mark is unstable. He's making this up because he's scared of commitment, Adrian. Pierce was fired 3 days ago for conducting an affair with a subordinate employee," I said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. "His wife Caroline filed for divorce and provided the magazine with documentation of your relationship. Company emails, hotel records, credit card statements, all of it." Jessica stood up from her seat in the family section. She used me as an alibi. Mom and Dad. Every time she told Mark she was visiting me in Portland, she was actually at a cabin with her boss. "I haven't seen her in over a year," Rebecca's mother gasped. Her father looked like he'd been punched. "Mark, please," Rebecca said, reaching for me. "We can talk about this. Whatever you think you found." "I think I found exactly what was there," I said, stepping back from her touch. "A woman who never loved me, who saw me as nothing but a payday, who was willing to commit fraud and adultery to steal my money." Tyler stepped forward and handed a folder to the officiant. "This is a complete investigation into Ms. Colvin's activities over the past 18 months. Photographs, electronic communications, financial records, everything documented and verified. I'm a licensed private investigator, and all of this evidence was gathered legally." The room had erupted into whispers. Rebecca's bridesmaids were backing away from her. Guests were pulling out their phones. Some people were starting to leave. Rebecca looked around at the disaster unfolding, at the life she'd so carefully constructed falling apart in real time. Then she turned back to me and I saw the mask finally drop. No more sweetness, no more fake love. Just cold calculation and anger. "You self-righteous asshole," she hissed. "You think you're so much better than me? You're just another trust fund baby playing at being a working man. I would have made you happy for as long as you needed. 6 months, a year. Then we both could have moved on. Was that really so terrible? Yes, I said simply. Yes, lying to someone for 2 years, making them believe in something that was never real, planning to rob them and abandon them. That's actually terrible. Rebecca's father had made his way to the altar. Rebecca Marie Colvin, is this true? Did you do what he's saying? Rebecca looked at her father, and for a moment, I saw something like shame cross her face. Then it hardened again. I did what I had to do. You and Mom always said I should marry well. I was just being strategic about it. We meant marry someone you loved who happened to be financially stable, her mother said, standing up now too. Not run a con on an innocent man. He's not innocent, Rebecca snapped. He's loaded with his family's money. Money he didn't earn. Money he doesn't deserve. I was just redistributing wealth. By lying and cheating and committing fraud, James said. That's not redistribution. That's theft. Are you pressing charges? Tyler asked me quietly. I thought about it. I could press charges. I had documentation of fraud, of intent to commit financial theft. I could probably get Rebecca arrested, convicted, sent to prison. But looking at her now, standing in her wedding dress in front of 180 people, who now knew exactly what she was, I realized that would be overkill. No, I said. No charges. Let her live with this instead. Let everyone know who she really is. Let her explain this to every future date, every future employer, every person she ever tries to manipulate again. I turned to the guests. Thank you all for coming. I'm sorry you traveled for a wedding that isn't happening. There's a fully catered reception downstairs that we've already paid for. Please stay and enjoy it. Consider it a celebration that I escaped before making a terrible mistake. I walked off the altar and out of the venue. James and Tyler followed. Jessica caught up with us in the parking lot. Mark, I'm so sorry, she said. If I'd known. You didn't know, I said. And that's not your fault. Rebecca is very good at what she does. What she did? Jessica corrected. I don't think she's going to be able to pull this kind of thing again. Not after today. She was right. By the time I got back to James's house where I was staying, the story had already gone viral on social media. Someone had live-streamed the whole confrontation. Rebecca's face, her admission, her angry defense of her actions. It was all over Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. The video had been viewed hundreds of thousands of times. The comments were savage over the next few days. The fallout was comprehensive. Rebecca's magazine published a statement condemning her actions and confirming her employment had been terminated. Her article archives were removed from their website. Other publications she'd written for quietly deleted her contributions. Adrian Pierce's divorce was finalized in record time, with Caroline getting full custody of the kids and the vast majority of their assets. Adrian moved into a studio apartment and, according to Tyler's sources, was working as a freelance copy editor, making a fraction of his former salary. Rebecca's parents released a statement through their church, saying they were deeply disappointed in their daughter's actions and were seeking counseling to understand how they'd failed in her moral education. Jessica cut off all contact with her sister, telling her friends and family that she couldn't be associated with someone who'd so thoroughly betrayed trust and decency. As for Rebecca herself, she disappeared from public life entirely, deleted her social media accounts, moved out of the city, vanished from the literary world she'd been part of. The last I heard, she was working retail in some small town in the Midwest, using her middle name instead of Rebecca, trying to escape her reputation. I stayed in the city, kept my job on the construction crew, started going to therapy to process the betrayal and rebuild my ability to trust. It took time, months of sitting in Dr. Morrison's office, working through the hurt and anger and violation of having someone I loved turn out to be completely false. James checked on me regularly, making sure I wasn't spiraling. My parents invited me to dinners and family events, surrounding me with genuine love and support. My construction crew never mentioned the wedding disaster, but they had my back in their own way, including me in after-work drinks and weekend poker games. 6 months after the non-wedding, I ran into Caroline Pierce at a coffee shop downtown. She was reading a medical journal, looking peaceful and content. Dr. Pierce, I said, do you mind if I join you? She looked up, smiled, and gestured to the empty chair across from her. Mark, please call me Caroline. How are you doing? Better, I said honestly. Therapy helps. Having family around helps. Knowing I escaped before actually marrying her really helps. I understand completely, Caroline said. Some days I wake up and just feel grateful. Grateful that I found out, grateful that I got out, grateful that my kids won't grow up thinking that kind of relationship is normal. We talked for an hour about recovery, about rebuilding trust, about the weird club we'd inadvertently joined, people who'd been conned by partners they loved. The thing I keep coming back to, Caroline said as we were parting, is that we're actually the lucky ones. We found out. We got away. Imagine if you'd married her, if I'd stayed with Adrian. Imagine living that lie forever. She was right. I was lucky. Lucky that Rebecca had been careless enough to leave her journal where I could find it. Lucky that I'd come home early that day. Lucky that I had family like James who knew how to protect me legally 1 year after the non-wedding. I was back at work on a new construction project. This time a renovation of an old library into a community center. I was up on the scaffolding installing new windows when I heard a familiar voice calling my name from below. I looked down and saw a woman. I didn't recognize at first. She was wearing jeans and a practical jacket, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, holding a clipboard and looking official. Mark Stevens? She called up again. Yeah, that's me, I called back. Who's asking? Sarah Chen. I'm the project manager for the design firm. I need to discuss some modifications to the window. Specifications. I climbed down and got a better look at her. She was maybe 30, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude that I found immediately appealing. We discussed the window changes for 15 minutes, and by the end of the conversation, I realized 2 things. First, she was brilliant at her job, and second, I wanted to talk to her about things that had nothing to do with windows. Can I buy you coffee? I asked when we'd finished discussing the project details.
To apologize for the inconvenience of redoing the window work.
Sarah smiled. The inconvenience isn't your fault, but I'd take coffee anyway. Though I should warn you, I looked you up before taking this project. I know about the wedding that didn't happen. My stomach dropped. Oh, I watched the video like everyone else, Sarah continued. And I thought to myself, there's a man who had the courage to walk away from a disaster, who had the strength to expose the truth even when it was humiliating, who protected himself legally instead of lashing out emotionally. That's the kind of person I'd like to know better. Really? I said, surprised. Really? Sarah confirmed. So yes to coffee. But somewhere we can talk properly. Not just about windows. We went to a cafe 3 blocks from the construction site. We talked for 2 hours, well past when we both should have been back at work. Sarah told me about her architecture degree, her passion for redesigning spaces for community use, her complicated relationship with her own family. I told her about the past year, about therapy and recovery and slowly learning to trust again. I'm probably not ready for anything serious, I admitted. I'm still working through a lot of damage. That's okay, Sarah said. I'm not looking for serious right now either, but I am looking for honest. And you strike me as someone who values honesty a lot these days. More than anything, I agreed. We started seeing each other casually. Coffee dates turned into dinner dates, which turned into weekend hikes and museum visits and slow, careful getting-to-know-you conversations. Sarah never pushed, never demanded more than I could give. She understood that trust had to be rebuilt slowly, brick by brick, like the buildings I helped construct. 8 months later, Sarah and I were officially together. Not engaged, not rushing into anything, just 2 people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company and were building something real on a foundation of honesty. I introduced her to my family at a Sunday dinner. My mother loved her immediately. James pulled me aside and said, "This one's different. This one's real. Don't screw it up." I won't, I promised. 2 years after the non-wedding, I got a message through LinkedIn from someone named Marcus Thompson. He explained that he'd dated Rebecca 4 years before I had, that he'd seen the wedding video, and that he wanted to thank me for exposing her. She took $200,000 from me. Marcus wrote, I never had proof, could never get the money back. But knowing that she finally got caught, that there's a public record of what she is, that gives me closure. Thank you, I wrote back. I'm sorry for what she did to you. If it helps, karma caught up with her pretty thoroughly. She lost her career, her reputation, her family support. She's living in some small town under her middle name, working retail, hiding from her past. Sometimes the universe does deliver justice. Marcus responded, Sometimes. And sometimes we have to deliver it ourselves. You did good, Mark. You exposed her, but you didn't destroy her. That takes character. 3 years after the non-wedding, Sarah and I bought a house together. It was a fixer-upper in a neighborhood that was being revitalized. Exactly the kind of project we both loved. I handled the structural work. Sarah designed the renovations. We worked on it every weekend, building our home literally from the ground up. This is what real partnership looks like, Sarah said one Saturday afternoon. Both of us covered in paint and dust, building something together. Honest communication, shared goals, equal effort. I know, I said, pulling her close despite the paint. I know exactly how lucky I am. 4 years after the non-wedding, on a quiet Tuesday evening in November, I asked Sarah to marry me. Not with a big production, not with a scripted speech. Just the two of us in the house we'd built together, with complete honesty about who we were and what we wanted. Yes, Sarah said immediately. 1,000 times yes. We got married. 6 months later in a small ceremony at the renovated community center where we'd first met, surrounded by family and close friends. The wedding was simple, honest, real. Everything my first attempt had pretended to be but never was. Standing at the altar with Sarah, exchanging vows that we'd written ourselves. I thought about that rainy Tuesday afternoon 4.5 years ago when I'd found Rebecca's journal. That moment had felt like the end of my life. Like everything I'd believed in was a lie. But it hadn't been the end. It had been a redirection, a course correction that had ultimately led me to something infinitely better, something real. The best revenge against someone who tried to con you isn't destroying them. It's building a life so genuine, so fulfilling, so completely honest that their deception becomes irrelevant. Rebecca had gambled on my trust fund and lost everything. I'd lost a con artist and gained a real partner. Looking at Sarah's face as she said her vows, I realized something important. Rebecca hadn't destroyed my ability to trust. She'd just taught me to trust more carefully, to value honesty more deeply, to recognize the difference between performance and reality. And that lesson, as painful as it had been to learn, had led me exactly where I needed to be. If you found value in this story, understand that betrayal doesn't have to define you. It can redirect you towards something better. The question isn't whether you'll face deception in life. You probably will. The question is what you'll build afterward. Will you let it make you bitter, or will you let it make you wiser? Will you close yourself off from trust, or will you learn to trust more intelligently? Everyone has a moment when life splits in two. When what you believe turns out to be false, when the foundation cracks. The measure of character isn't whether that moment destroys you, it's what you construct from the wreckage.